Okay, so, we've done some pretty interesting deep dives on this show, but this one you sent me,
Hmm.
I gotta say, like, you really dug deep into the dirt on this one. This stuff is fascinating.
It is. You're right. Like the stuff we're going into this week is like behind the scenes Hollywood scandals from like the golden age. It's great.
Yeah, the golden age of Hollywood.
Yeah.
And, like, we're talking about, like, yeah, I mean, the big names, the big studios, all that,
Yeah.
all the glitz and the glamour, but then also, like, all the stuff that was, like, hidden away from the public.
Right. Underneath that shiny veneer, we've got some really dark stuff going on. And, a lot of the stuff that you sent over was these like kind of recent articles, I guess, looking back on these events. They're sort of like historical retrospectives, I guess,
Right, right.
from websites like, Listverse and BuzzFeed and History Collection and Medium and Watchmo and all these like
Yeah,
websites.
yeah.
Uh, but it's interesting to see like how people are still fascinated by this stuff, even though it's from like way back when.
Yeah, and it's from different times too, like they're published at different times. So it's like you get a different perspective, I think, depending on when it was published.
Yeah, like when the author sat down and was really contemplating this stuff.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So, yeah, so like we're talking everything from like intensely personal like dramas and, feuds to like alleged criminal activities
Yeah,
and
right.
alleged, studio cover-up. So it really is kind of like a window into the underbelly of Hollywood.
Right. So what we're going to do today is kind of try to synthesize this, what you sent me. I mean, this is a lot of information.
It is.
We're going to pull out, hopefully the most compelling and memorable of these scandals and kind of like give our listeners,
A good overview.
yeah, like a really good understanding of this history, like the kind of stuff that like,
Sticks with you.
yeah, sticks with you without like having to, do all the reading yourself.
Right. We did the reading for you.
Yeah, exactly. We're kind of like your guides
Yeah.
to the underbelly of Hollywood.
Absolutely.
All right, so I think a good place to start is with a name that like practically is early Hollywood,
Sure.
Charlie Chaplin. I mean, he's like
Oh, yeah.
he's like one of the biggest stars of,
Huge.
early Hollywood, yeah. So he one thing that kind of sticks out in a lot of these articles is
His predilection for younger women.
yeah, younger women and like significantly younger.
Yeah.
Way younger. I mean, his first wife, Mildred Harris, was only 16 when they married. And then he does it again with Lita Gray, also 16.
Wow. 16.
And then even later, Paulette Goddard was in her 20s, which is, I guess, a little bit more.
Better.
Yeah, a little bit better. But then Una O'Neill, I mean, she was only 18 when he was 53.
Huge age gap there.
Yeah.
That's a big age gap. And I think you're right to point out that the kind of troubling nature of those relationships, like
Yeah.
that power dynamic just seems really off.
Yeah. And it wasn't just the age gap that was a big deal. It was also, the scandal surrounding his divorce from Lita Gray. I mean, she didn't hold back. I mean, she accused him of like demanding that she get an abortion, even though like she wasn't pregnant when they got married or something like that. And like portrayed him as like this abusive monster womanizer,
Yeah.
like a really bad guy. And then on top of all of that, the settlement was just astronomical. Like it was $800,000,
Right.
which was just like the biggest divorce settlement in American history at the time.
So this was huge. This was a big deal.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see like how Chaplin's personal life kind of becomes entangled with like the political stuff of the time.
Right.
Because, the sources mentioned that he was denied re-entry into the U.S. in 1952.
Right.
Ostensibly because of, these alleged communist sympathies.
Right.
And this was like the height of the Red Scare and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's really interesting to see how, like, those two things kind of collide. And even, Hedda Hopper, the gossip columnist,
Right.
She apparently disliked him intensely because of his left-leaning political views.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, Hollywood was very intertwined with the political landscape back then.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of political stuff, there's also the Mann Act. I don't know if you know about this, but
Refresh my memory. What's the Mann Act?
so the Mann Act was basically, it was a federal law
Okay.
that made it illegal to like transport women across state lines for like,
Oh, okay. For immoral purposes. I see.
for immoral purposes. Yeah, exactly. And so he was actually prosecuted under the Mann Act.
Chaplin.
Yeah, because of a claim by Joan Barry that he was the father of her child. And get this, J. Edgar Hoover got involved. Like J. Edgar Hoover himself.
Because of the communist sympathies?
Yeah, like he was kind of pushing the Justice Department to go after Chaplin.
Wow.
So it really wasn't just about like celebrity gossip. You know, it was like the government was actually taking an interest.
Yeah, it was almost like they were looking for a reason to get him. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to another big name, Jean Harlow,
Okay.
another, icon of the golden age.
Mm-hmm.
But her story is pretty
Tumultuous.
tumultuous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like studio interference, personal drama. It's like a whirlwind.
Yeah, it is.
So one thing that's interesting is that, the studio apparently like forced her to marry the cinematographer Harold Rawson.
Why would they do that?
Well, it was to like cover up her affair with a married boxer.
Oh, so they just wanted to create a smokescreen.
Yeah, basically. Like they were trying to like,
Protect her image.
yeah, protect her image, make everything look like
Respectable.
respectable, yeah. But I mean, marriage based on a lie like that, it's not going to last.
Of course not, no.
Yeah.
So is that short-lived?
Yeah, very short-lived. And then there's her relationship with William Powell, which is also kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the articles suggests that she actually got pregnant
Oh, wow.
with Powell and had an abortion.
Really?
But kept it a secret from him. So, it really kind of shows you the kind of pressure these stars were under,
Yeah.
to maintain this like pristine public image.
Right, they couldn't have anything tarnish their reputation.
Yeah. But, the stuff about her marriage to the MGM executive Paul Byrne, that's really kind of unsettling.
That's a whole other can of worms, right?
Yeah.
So what happened there?
So he dies suddenly. It looks like a suicide.
Okay.
The sources mention like a note his body found naked with a gun.
Yeah. Very classic Hollywood.
Yeah. But the studio gets involved immediately.
Of course they do.
Like they're like right there trying to manage the situation.
Control the narrative. Yeah.
And so, naturally people start talking like, was it really a suicide?
Right.
And then there are these rumors that are circulating about murder, potentially by a former lover.
A jealous ex.
Yeah. A jealous ex, Dorothy Millette.
Oh my gosh.
And she dies too, like shortly after.
Oh wow. So there's a lot of intrigue here.
Yeah, and then to add another layer to this whole thing, it turns out that Byrne was actually still legally married to Millette when he married Harlow.
Oh, so like bigamy on top of everything else.
It's just a whole mess.
It's a mess. Yeah.
And the studio's right in the middle of it, trying to,
Make it all go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the articles kind of paint Harlow as this, scandal monger.
Right.
And it wasn't just, this incident with Byrne, but her open sexuality, the abortion with Powell,
Right.
Alleged connections to gangsters like Bugsy Siegel, even an affair with Clark Gable that some people speculate drove Byrne to suicide.
Right.
Then you have Max Baer's wife accusing her of an affair. I mean,
It's just like,
it never ends.
yeah, it's like she can't catch a break.
No. And then she dies in 26 from kidney failure.
Yeah. It's just tragic.
It really is.
So let's move on to another star whose life was kind of defined by the studio system.
Yeah.
Judy Garland.
Sure.
Um,
Another icon.
yeah, another icon. And her story, it highlights the really exploitative side
Mm-hmm.
of the studio system, like what they could do to these young stars.
That's really awful.
So MGM, they basically had her under their thumb from a very young age.
Right. They controlled everything.
And they were just relentless about her looks and her weight.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they put her on a crazy diet. They forced her to take amphetamines.
Oh my gosh, to stay awake.
Yeah, to keep her energy up and to, like, suppress her appetite.
So she could stay thin.
Oh, that's awful.
And then they'd give her sleeping pills to like counteract the amphetamine. So
Oh.
it was just like this.
Just a constant cycle of uppers and downers.
Yeah.
Terrible.
And then they would like order her back to work like the day after she got married. I mean,
Oh, my God.
she got married at 19
So young.
and they were like, nope, back to work.
No honeymoon.
Yeah, no honeymoon. And
No.
then when she got pregnant,
Oh, wow.
they arranged for her to have an abortion. They didn't even let her have control over her own body.
Yeah, they had no control over their own lives, really. It's really sad.
Yeah, it's really tragic.
All right, let's talk about Joan Crawford.
Oh, yeah. Another name that's like synonymous with old Hollywood drama.
Yeah.
For sure. What's the dirt on Joan?
So her career's always been kind of shrouded in like whispers and accusations.
Mm.
And one of the biggest ones is this rumor about her starring in an adult film early in her career.
An adult film? Really?
Like porno.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, supposedly it was called Velvet Lips.
Velvet Lips. Okay.
And the story goes that MGM spent like a ton of money.
To cover it up.
Yeah, to suppress it. Like they were working with the mob to like buy up all the copies.
Wow, so they were really trying to protect her image.
Yeah. And they might have even like paid off her brother to keep quiet.
Her own brother.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then there's the amount of money that she paid MGM when she left the studio.
Which was how much?
It was like $50,000.
That's a lot of money, especially back then.
Yeah. And some people think that that was related to this whole like cover up.
Well, that's interesting. So like a payoff.
Yeah, like a hush money kind of thing.
Wow.
And then of course there's the feud with Bette Davis, which is legendary.
Oh, yeah.
Like everyone knows about that.
They did not get along.
No, they did not.
At all. What was that about?
Well, I mean, there are all these stories, like Crawford allegedly timing her divorce announcement
Oh, my God.
to like overshadow a movie announcement that Davis was making.
So petty.
And then she marries Franchot Tone, who Davis was in love with.
Oh, wow.
And then maybe the most famous one is when she accepts her Oscar from bed for Mildred Pierce.
Which is the movie that Davis turned down.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
Classic.
Yeah.
So shady. And then, of course, there's the whole thing with her adopted daughter, Christina,
Oh, yeah.
who wrote that tell-all memoir, Mommy Dearest,
Yeah.
which kind of painted a not-so-flattering picture of her. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah. So it just added to her controversial legacy, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Errol Flynn.
All right. Errol Flynn. He was a bit of a ladies' man, right?
Yeah. So his name actually like entered the lexicon, like in like Flynn.
Yeah, and like Flynn.
But it's kind of ironic considering like what happened later in his career.
What do you mean?
Well, he was accused of statutory rape.
Oh, wow.
Like 2 underage girls accused him, Peggy Satterley and Betty Hansen.
Wow.
And even though he was acquitted,
Like the damage was done.
yeah, it kind of like cemented his reputation as like this Lothario, this womanizer.
Right.
This guy who's just like,
Always getting away with it.
yeah. And so the phrase "in like Flynn" kind of took on this like,
Ironic meaning.
yeah, like maybe not so much of a good thing.
Right.
And then on top of that, there were all these rumors about his personal life.
Yeah, like what?
Like losing his virginity at a very young age.
How young are we talking?
Like 10.
Oh, my gosh. Having two-way mirrors installed in his home.
What?
And like engaging in all sorts of sexual experiments.
So he was a wild one.
Yeah, he was a wild one.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to Elizabeth Taylor.
Okay, Elizabeth Taylor. So,
She was a big deal.
yeah, she was a big deal. And her romantic life,
Was a mess.
yeah, it was a mess. I mean, it was like a constant source of gossip and scandal.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the biggest scandals was her affair with Eddie Fisher,
Oh, yeah.
who was married to her close friend Debbie Reynolds.
Oh, my.
And this was after her husband Mike Todd had died.
Right, so she was a widow.
Yeah. So she was grieving, and then she has this affair, and the public just went crazy.
They went crazy. And she got slut-shamed like nobody's business.
Yeah, she was demonized. Like, she was the villain in the whole thing.
Even though he was the one who was married.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see how, like, the studio system kind of navigated these very public, personal dramas. Because when Taylor had one film left on her MGM contract,
Yeah.
they insisted that she star in Butterfield 8.
Right. Which she hated.
Yeah. She hated it because she felt like it was exploiting her personal life.
Yeah.
Especially with the whole Eddie Fisher thing.
Right.
But get this, she won an Oscar for that role.
Yeah, in 1961. So it's like this weird thing where like the scandal
Yeah.
and the personal drama kind of like,
Helped her career.
yeah, it's just weird. And also the sources mention her early marriage to Conrad Nicky Hilton
Oh, yeah.
when she was just 17,
Yeah.
which was also a huge mess, like super short-lived, tumultuous.
So it seems like a pattern with her.
Yeah.
A lot of drama. Okay, let's talk about Ingrid Bergman.
All right, Ingrid Bergman. So she had this affair.
A very famous affair.
Yeah, a very famous affair with the Italian director Roberto Rossellini.
Roberto Rossellini.
And they were both married at the time.
Oh, wow.
And then she gets pregnant.
Oh, my gosh.
And they get divorced from their spouses and
Yeah.
they get married.
That's a lot. So did this cause a scandal?
Oh, yeah. A huge scandal. Like the public, especially in the U.S., just like,
Freaked out.
yeah, like one senator, Edwin Johnson.
A senator, wow.
Yeah, he called Rossellini vile and unspeakable and like even wanted them barred from the country.
Wow. It was that serious?
Yeah, it was huge. And so she basically ends up exiling herself from Hollywood.
Wow.
Yeah. Like she went to Europe and stayed there for several years.
So she couldn't work in Hollywood anymore.
No, not for a while.
So her career was basically over.
Yeah, for a time. I mean, it wasn't until 1956 with Anastasia that she kind of made a comeback.
And even then, that was filmed in Europe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so we've talked a lot about like personal scandals,
Right.
but what about some of the scandals involving the powerful figures behind the scenes?
Yeah, let's talk about William Randolph Hearst.
Oh, yeah. Like he was a big deal back then.
Yeah, he was a media mogul. Like he had newspapers, magazines.
He was a big player.
Yeah, and he was very influential in Hollywood. So there's this long-standing story about an incident that happened involving Charlie Chaplin
Oh, Chaplin again.
and Hearst's wife, Marion Davies.
Okay, what happened?
So Hearst suspected that Chaplin and Davies were having an affair.
Oh, so a love triangle.
Yeah, and so in a fit of rage, he might have tried to shoot Chaplin.
Oh, my God.
But accidentally shot and killed the director Thomas Ince.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and so the story goes that there was this huge cover-up.
To protect Hearst.
Yeah, to protect Hearst. And the sources mention, Ince's wife suddenly going on a European tour and a witness seeing Ince with a head wound.
Wow.
It's a pretty wild story.
Yeah, and it's hard to know what's true and what's not.
Yeah,
But it's a good story.
it's a good story. And then there's the feud with Orson Welles over Citizen Kane,
Oh, yeah.
which was basically like a thinly veiled portrait of Hearst.
A very unflattering portrait.
Yeah. And so Hearst was not happy about that.
No. He tried to get the movie shut down, right?
Yeah, he tried to use all his power and influence to prevent it from being released.
But it came out anyway.
Yeah.
Classic.
So, it really shows you how powerful these guys were and how far they were willing to go to protect their image.
Right. Yeah, they were not messing around.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the intersection of Hollywood and the criminal underworld.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
So one of the figures who kind of embodies this is George Raft.
George Raft, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not too familiar with him.
So he was a tough guy actor, like a gangster type.
Oh, okay.
And it turns out that his real life was kind of like his movies.
Oh, so he was a real gangster.
Well, he was definitely associated with mobsters, like the
Yeah.
sources mention Oni Madden, Bugsy Siegel.
Wow, big names.
Yeah. And he even admitted to running bootleg liquor for them.
Wow.
And apparently Siegel was actually instrumental in getting Raft into the movies.
Oh, so he owed his career to the mob?
Yeah, kind of.
Wow.
And then there are these stories about Al Capone showing the director of Scarface.
The original Scarface.
Yeah, the original Scarface, showing him how to use a Tommy gun.
Oh, my
But,
God.
this is how you do it.
Oh,
So it's clear that Hollywood and organized crime.
we're very close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Tallulah Bankhead.
Oh, Tallulah Bankhead. She was a character.
She was a character.
Yeah. So what made her so scandalous?
Well, she was just completely outrageous. She didn't care what people thought.
Okay, give me the details.
So she would talk openly about her sex life.
Really?
Oh, yeah. She famously claimed to have had 185 notches on her bedpost.
185.
Yeah. And she also admitted to having multiple abortions by the time she was 30,
Wow.
which, back then was.
A huge deal.
Yeah. And the sources say that the studios actually had protocols in place
Right.
to deal with situations like that.
So they would help their stars get abortions.
Yeah, basically. It was more common than you might think.
But it was all very hush-hush.
Yeah, very hush-hush.
Yeah.
And she was just so blunt and so candid.
Everything.
Yeah. One of the sources mentions her saying that she took a role in a movie just to sleep with Gary Cooper.
Oh, my God. She
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she was just
Living her life.
yeah,
No shame.
no shame.
That's amazing.
All right, so as we wrap up here, let's do a rapid fire round of some other notable scandals that your sources mentioned.
Hit me.
So we've got the Fatty Arbuckle trial
Yeah.
for the death of Virginia Rapp. He was acquitted, but his career was ruined.
Well.
Then there's the mysterious death of Thelma Todd,
Oh, yeah?
officially ruled a suicide, but there were all these rumors about murder and connections to gangsters.
Right.
And then there's the unsolved murder of the director William Desmond Taylor.
Mhm.
And the LAPD might have actually suppressed evidence related to his relationships with underage actresses.
Oh, wow.
And then there's the horrific on-set accident during the filming of the Twilight Zone movie.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah, Vic Morrow and 2 child actors were killed.
Yeah, and it led to a huge scandal, a lot of changes in the industry.
Right, like about child labor and safety regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Robert Mitchum getting arrested for marijuana possession,
Oh, yeah?
which surprisingly didn't really hurt his career.
Interesting.
And then there's Lana Turner's daughter, Cheryl Crane, stabbing her mom's mobster boyfriend to death.
Oh, wow.
But she was exonerated.
Wow.
So there's that. And then there's the rumored affair between Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich,
Mm-hmm.
which they both denied, but then Dietrich later said some pretty shady stuff about Garbo.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's the mystery surrounding the winner of the 1957 Best Motion Picture Story Oscar, who was this guy, Robert Rich.
Robert Rich.
But it turned out to be the blacklisted writer Dalton Trumbo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was writing under a pseudonym.
So he could still work.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then there's the whole thing with RKO Pictures promoting Tender Comrade for an Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of used some shady tactics to do it.
Oh, interesting.
And then there's the whole, like, resistance to the Academy Awards when they first started.
Yeah.
The Screen Actors Guild and the Screenwriters Guild were opposed to it.
Mhm.
They even boycotted the ceremony.
Yeah, they didn't want anything to do with it.
And then there's this weird case of a missing Oscar.
A missing Oscar.
Yeah. It was awarded to Alice Brady in 1938,
Okay.
and then it disappeared.
What?
Yeah. And so there was this whole, like, story about a mystery man, you know, kind of like the Robert Rich thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it turned out that the award had just been delivered and then sold at auction.
Oh, so it wasn't really missing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then there were the affairs of Laurence Olivier and Vivian Leigh and Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall,
Mm-hmm.
all while they were married to other people.
Yeah, very scandalous.
And the Hattie McDaniel Oscar controversy, which was a big deal
Right.
because she was the first African-American to win an Oscar.
Right. But she wasn't even allowed to sit with the other nominees.
Yeah.
Because of segregation.
Yeah. And then there's Clark Gable.
Oh, yeah.
So apparently he might have been a hustler before he was famous.
A hustler.
Yeah. And he also had a secret child with Loretta Young.
Oh, wow.
And then Walt Disney gave Leni Riefenstahl a tour of his studio.
Who's Leni Riefenstahl?
She was a Nazi filmmaker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was controversial.
Understandably.
And then there's Spade Cooley, the country western singer. He murdered his wife.
Oh, my gosh.
And then Peg Entwistle committed suicide by jumping off the Hollywood sign.
That's awful.
And Ted Healy, the creator of the Three Stooges, died under mysterious circumstances.
Oh, wow.
There were rumors of a studio cover-up and maybe even like Cubby Broccoli being involved.
Cubby Broccoli, the James Bond producer?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then during the filming of Hell's Angels.
The Howard Hughes movie.
Yeah. 3 pilots died.
Oh, my gosh.
And then there's the death of George Reeves.
Superman.
Yeah. Superman. It was ruled a suicide, but some people think there was foul play involved.
Right.
And then Sandra Dee struggled with anorexia because of studio pressure.
Oh, yeah.
And Joan Bennett's husband shot her agent.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and it hurt her career.
Wow.
And then there's Natalie Wood's death,
Mm-hmm.
which is still kind of a mystery.
Yeah.
And then Clara Bow had all these legal and financial problems later in life.
Right.
And Jerry Lee Lewis married his 13-year-old cousin,
Oh, yeah.
which was a huge scandal.
Yeah, he was basically blacklisted after that.
And then finally, there were all these famous Hollywood feuds, like Debbie Reynolds and Elizabeth Taylor,
Oh, yeah.
Johnny Carson and Joan Rivers, Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin, Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine.
They were sisters, right?
Yeah. Orson Welles and William Randolph Hearst,
Mm-hmm.
Vivian Vance and William Frawley,
Oh, yeah.
Marlon Brando and Frank Sinatra,
Wow.
and of course the biggest one of all, Joan Crawford and Bette Davis.
Oh, yeah. Now, that was a few for the ages.
So yeah, a lot of drama.
A lot of drama. So, to kind of sum all this up,
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty clear that the golden age of Hollywood
Mm.
was not all it was cracked up to be.
Yeah.
Like, behind all that glamour and glitz,
Right.
there was a lot of darkness.
Yeah. A lot of secrets, a lot of scandals,
Right.
a lot of exploitation.
And a lot of really powerful people trying to control everything.
Yeah. So it's really fascinating to kind of like peel back the layers and see what was really going on.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what's interesting is that even though these stories are from like decades ago,
Mm-hmm.
they still resonate with us today
Right.
because, you know, we're still fascinated by celebrity and scandal and
Right.
like